The cameras were already packed up. The lawyers had already gone home. Everybody thought this story was dead until the wrong envelope hit the wrong desk and one name started crawling back out of the grave Jay-Z thought he buried 26 years ago. You don't even know what you're about to hear. Hey, it's Gigi, and I need you to lock the door, mute the TV, and put your phone face down, because the version of this story you've been fed by every blog, every podcast, every late-night clip farm is the polished one, the PR-approved one, the one that lets a billionaire sleep at night. What I'm about to walk you through is the unedited cut, the version sitting in court files, in barbershop recordings, in dead mother whispers nobody was supposed to amplify. And by the time we're done, you'll understand why a man worth $2.5 billion is sweating over a kid in a hoodie who has never spent a day in a recording studio. Before we go 1 inch deeper, smash that like, share this to one friend who still thinks Jay is untouchable, and drop one word in the comments, just one, that tells me what you really think this is. Cover up, coincidence, karma. Pick a lane. The comment section under this video is about to look like a courtroom, and I want your name on the docket. Now lean in. Let me drop you exactly where the real story starts, because the timeline matters more than you think. Early 90s, Brooklyn. The man you now know as Jay-Z isn't Jay-Z yet. He's still Sean. He's still hustling on corners that don't have his face painted on them. He's still chasing the dream that hasn't been monetized into a Roc Nation logo. And during that window, that specific, undocumented, dangerous window, there is allegedly a 16-year-old girl named Wanda. According to the filings, she has a son. She gives that son a name to hold on to, Sean. She tells that boy when he is barely tall enough to reach a kitchen counter that the man on the radio is his father. And then she does the most haunting thing a mother can do. She dies while the secret is still inside her mouth, and she leaves it inside her son's chest like a key with no door to open. That son is Rymir, and Rymir, 26 years later, just stopped being patient. Here's where the story stops feeling like a tabloid headline and starts feeling like a thriller you forgot to pause. Court documents, actual filings, not internet rumors, not TikTok stitches, the real paper obtained by E! News and other outlets, lay out a sequence of allegations that read like the bones of a Netflix limited series. Rymir's legal team is accusing Jay-Z of dodging paternity testing for years. They're alleging he used his influence with public officials to keep the case quiet. They're alleging he tampered with legal proceedings. And then there's the line that nobody on Jay's side wants you to highlight. According to the team, Jay-Z has never once, in 26 years, in any interview, in any deposition, in any clean public moment, stood up and said the 5 words that would end it in an instant. I am not his father. He has never, simply, plainly denied it. You can rewind that, you can pause that, you can fact-check that on your own time. He has never said it. Now, Jay's side will tell you a different story, and I'm going to give it to you straight because I'm not running a propaganda channel. His attorneys came back swinging on June 16th. They called Rymir's federal lawsuit fabricated. They called the allegations rejected. They called it a decades-long harassment campaign. They said the suit wasn't even properly served. They said Jay didn't learn about it until a full month after it landed in May. They asked for more time. They tried to reach Rymir's godmother and co-plaintiff, and according to them, she hung up the phone. So, you've got 2 sides circling each other in a legal ring the public can't see inside of. And yet, every leak, every testimony, every off-the-record quote is sliding out from under the door like smoke. And then there's Rymir himself. On camera, no entourage, no diamond chain, no PR coach feeding him talking points through an earpiece. Just a young man with calloused hands, looking dead into the lens and saying the sentence that has been quietly nuclear for 2 months. Do I believe wholeheartedly that Jay-Z is my father? Yes. And if he isn't, prove it. Take the test, swab the cheek, say the word no. I can live with no. What I cannot live with is silence. You feel that? That right there is not a cloud chaser. That's a man who has been waiting on a phone call his whole life. Let me paint you something the headlines refuse to draw. Imagine being 7 years old, eating cereal at a kitchen table, and your mother is pointing at a billboard and saying, "That's your daddy on that wall." Imagine 8 years old. Imagine 9. Imagine your mother repeating that name like a prayer every birthday, every Christmas, every time the song comes on in the car. Imagine her dying before he ever calls you back. Imagine becoming a grown nan with your own children climbing your shoulders, and the only memory you have of your father is a chorus from the radio. That's not a paternity case. That is a wound that grew teeth. Now let me slow you all the way down, because the internet is already running with a version of the story that did not happen, and I refuse to let you walk out of this video repeating something that isn't real. There's a clip circulating right now, you've probably seen it stitched on TikTok with sad piano underneath, that describes a courtroom scene where a judge reads DNA result aloud. Jay-Z's head drops, his hands grip the wood, he can't breathe, the empire cracks in real time. It is cinematic. It is heartbreaking. It is also, as of the moment I'm recording this, not confirmed by any court ruling. Rymir himself has said publicly that he withdrew the case, not because he's quitting. He said, and I'm quoting him here, that he's stepping back to play chess, not checkers. He said he plans to refile. He said it might take another 10 years. 10 more years of motions and hearings and headlines that could outlive both of them if neither one blinks. So when somebody slides into your DMs with that DNA collapse clip, ask one question. Is that footage or is that a story? Because right now, in the cold paperwork, what we actually have is this: allegation, response, denial, withdrawal, promised refile, and one young man who refuses to disappear. Messier than the meme, but bigger than the meme too. Because here's the angle nobody is touching, and this is the part I need you to chain yourself to the chair for. Everybody is treating this like a paternity fight. It isn't. It is an identity war. Two men, more than 20 years apart, both shaped by the same 5 blocks of Brooklyn, both fighting for the same single English word: father. One of them is fighting to keep that word locked in a glass case, polished, controlled, surrounded by lawyers and contracts. The other one is fighting just to hear it spoken back to him, one time, in public, by the man who owes him the syllables. Think about that for 1 second longer than is comfortable. Jay-Z's entire legacy is built on the architecture of being 2 steps ahead. The corner boy who became the CEO, the rapper who bought himself out, the young man who watched his own father walk out the front door and swore, on record, on song after song, on platinum, that he would never be that man. He sold the world that gospel. He sold Beyonce that gospel. He sold Blue Ivy that gospel. And now a stranger with the same neighborhood DNA is standing in front of a camera saying, "You are exactly the man you swore you would never become. You walked out the door. You walked out on me." That's not a lawsuit. That's a mirror. And mirrors don't care how much your jeweler charges per carat. Pull up his entire discography right now and listen to it with this new layer. The bars about his absent father, the verses where he promises Blue he will be everything his own dad never was, the interviews where he tears up describing the day he reconciled with his own daddy on a deathbed. Every one of those moments, every one of those lyrics that turned into a brand, that turned into a Super Bowl. That turned into a $1 billion bank account, becomes a completely different song the second you imagine Rymir hearing it on a kitchen radio at 7 years old with his mother sitting across the table saying, "That man on the speaker is your daddy." Imagine being the kid the song was supposed to be about, and instead being the kid the song forgot. Imagine memorizing your father's face from an album cover because no family photo ever existed. That's not the kind of childhood that heals. That's the kind of childhood that files a federal lawsuit 20 years later and refuses to drop it. And here is where the receipts start stacking in places people aren't even looking. There is a barbershop conversation that has been circulating quietly for months, and the voices in that room break it down like this. They say Rymir is thorough. They say he's not chasing money, he's chasing a dad. They say the kid called one of them 2 years ago and said, "I just want a father, I'm already grown." They tell a story and listen carefully about Rymir leaving his house for work, finding a gun in his car that he says wasn't his, and the police rolling up the very second he stepped out to ask his friend what it was doing there. They say the kid swears it was a setup. They say, who in the hood wastes a working gun like that? They say someone wanted that boy scared off the fight. They say, why would Jay-Z's people allegedly offer the kid money, then allegedly back away, if he was a complete stranger? And then comes the line that lands like a brick through a stained glass window. If it's not his son, why not just take the test? Why use the legal system as a shield? Why let the silence speak louder than a denial ever could? That right there is the question Jay-Z cannot afford to keep dodging another sunrise, because every day the dodge continues, the internet writes the answer for him. Now, let me steer you somewhere darker, because this is the part that turns a celebrity headline into something the algorithm cannot unbury. The reason a lot of insiders believe Jay is genuinely hesitant to take the test isn't about Rymir at all. It's about Wanda. Because if Wanda was 16 and Sean Carter was already in his early 20s, you are no longer talking about a paternity result. You are talking about a paternity result sitting on top of an age of consent question in a state, in an era with paperwork that doesn't disappear. And those rooms know it. You can hear it in the cadence of their voices. One of them says out loud, and I want you to hear this exactly, if he takes the test and it comes back positive, he is not just Jay-Z the father anymore. He is Jay-Z the man with a question mark over a teenage mother. And once that question mark prints on a headline, it does not unprint. Not for the Super Bowl, not for Roc Nation, not for the Carter Christmas card, not for anyone. That is why this isn't really about a DNA result. It is about what a DNA result would unlock. And the unlock is what's keeping a security team up at night. Because once a public figure of that altitude gets tied to a story shaped like that, the dominoes don't stop. You start asking questions about every endorsement deal, about every brand partnership, about every halftime show, every Roc Nation signing, every NFL contract, every artist who ever stood behind that man on a stage. The math of his entire empire gets recalculated overnight. That isn't me being theatrical, that is just how the modern internet operates in 2026. One headline and the columns of the tower start sliding sideways. Sponsors get nervous, boards get nervous, the phones at the top of the building start ringing in a different tone, and nobody who built a fortress as carefully as Sean Carter wants those phones to ring like that. Every shareholder meeting suddenly becomes a rehearsal for a question nobody wants to be the first to ask out loud. And listen, I owe you honesty, because I'm not selling you a fairy tale. Allegations are not convictions. Rumors are not rulings. A withdrawn lawsuit is not a victory. Anyone telling you a judge has already stamped Rymir as Jay-Z's son is either guessing or making content for the timeline. Here is what's actually real. There is a young man with a story he refuses to let die. There is a billionaire with a legal team in overdrive. There is a dead mother whose voice still echoes through her son's mouth like a ghost with one last sentence to deliver. There is a public that is no longer willing to look away. And there is a clock ticking, ticking, ticking. Because every time Jay's camp files another motion, every time Rymir withdraws and refiles, every time a fresh clip drops, the picture of Jay-Z as the untouchable patriarch chips just a little more. You want to know what makes this different from every other celebrity scandal you have ever clicked on? It is not the money. It is not the fame. It is not even Beyonce, although she's the next chapter of this video, so don't you dare scroll away. It is the fact that Rymir is asking for the one thing Jay-Z has guarded harder than the Rockefeller catalog: acknowledgement. He is asking for his father's eyes to land on his face, one time, in public, in front of the world and not slide past him like he's a stranger on a crosswalk. That is a request no PR team on Earth can deflect with a press release. So let's talk about her, because you cannot tell this story honestly without saying her name. Beyonce, the woman who built an entire visual album out of Becky with the good hair, the woman who turned betrayal into lemonade, who turned heartbreak into a stadium tour, who stood next to Sean Carter through every storm and quietly rebuilt the Carter brand from the inside out, brick by Cowboy Carter brick. So what does she do with this? Because this isn't Becky. This isn't a one-night ego bruise. This is a grown man with a face, a name, a mother who has been calling Sean his daddy since the 90s, and a story that, if the allegations are even within a mile of being true, existed before the love story ever started. Beyonce didn't sign up for that chapter. She signed up for the chapters that came after. And the world is staring at her right now with two questions tattooed on its lips. Will she stand, or will she finally walk? Some of you in the comments are already typing, "She has known the whole time, Gigi, don't play." Some of you are typing, "They would never." Some of you are typing, "This is a man's mess, leave her out of it." I want every single one of those takes loud, honest, petty, and unfiltered, because whatever Beyonce does next is going to be its own chapter in this saga, and she has never once made a move that wasn't strategic. So whatever you think is coming next from her camp, multiply it by 10 and add a surprise drop at midnight, because that is the level we are operating at. She doesn't react, she responds. And when she responds, she does it on a stage with a sold-out crowd and a wardrobe change between every verse. So save this video, bookmark it, pin the tab, because if she breaks her silence on any of this, you are going to want to come back here and rewatch this whole thing with new ears and fresh notes in the margin. And then there are the kids. Blue Ivy, old enough now to read every headline her parents tried to bury. Rumi and Sir, growing up watching a story unfold around their father that is going to define how they see him long after he is gone. What does Blue do the first time a classmate slides her a phone with a clip on it and whispers, "Is this your brother?" What does Jay say the first time one of his own daughters looks up at the dinner table and asks the only question that actually matters? "Daddy, is this true?" Money cannot answer that. Lawyers cannot answer that. Even Beyonce cannot answer that. Only Sean Carter can. And every day he doesn't, the silence in that house has to be getting louder. Imagine a dinner table that big and that quiet at the same time. Imagine the chef walking out and pretending to not notice. Imagine the security team pretending to not hear. Imagine the staff knowing the answer before the family does. Let me bring it all the way home, because I do not waste your time and I do not waste my own. Here is the truth, stripped down to the bone marrow. Jay-Z is fighting a war on two fronts at the same time. On one front, he is fighting a young man with nothing to lose and a story that gets more sympathetic with every interview. On the other front, he is fighting his own legend, because the legend says he is the smartest man in the room. The legend says he never makes a move he can't explain. The legend says he loves his family above everything. And every day this case stays alive, that legend has to answer questions it never wanted on the table. Why no test? Why no clean denial? Why a lien on a grandmother's house? Why an alleged offer of money to a kid you say is a stranger? Why is the man who built an empire on owning his narrative suddenly so quiet, while a kid in jeans and a hoodie owns the entire timeline? Why are the people who used to call him untouchable starting to call him uncomfortable? Why is every interview he has done in the last year suddenly being clipped and recut and replayed through this new lens, this new shadow, this new sun? Why does every old verse about absent fathers suddenly sound like a confession instead of a triumph? The kid did not win yet. Let me say it loud enough for the back row. The kid did not win yet. There's no confirmed DNA verdict. There's no judge banging a gavel. There's no breaking news alert that reads, "It is official." But you don't have to win a case to win the culture. And right now, in the culture, Rymir is winning. Because the culture is no longer asking, is he his son? The culture is asking, why is Jay acting like he might be? That tiny shift, that single linguistic rearrangement, is the entire ballgame. Listen to me. Empires don't fall in one afternoon. They crack first. The cracks are quiet. The cracks look harmless. The cracks look like a withdrawn lawsuit, a barbershop clip, a 30-second interview with a soft-spoken kid. And then one morning you wake up and the empire is rubble and everybody is acting like they saw it coming. I'm telling you right now. You saw it on this channel, you saw it on this video, and when this story breaks open the rest of the way, and it will, I want you to remember who walked you through it line by line. Mark this video, save it, send it to the friend who thinks none of this matters, because by the time it matters, it'll be too late to catch up. You will be ahead of the curve. I love that for you. I keep coming back to one image. A young man sitting at a kitchen table, his own children climbing on his shoulders, watching the news on mute. The chyron underneath the screen says his alleged father's name. The cameras flash, the lawyers walk in, the world spins on without him, and he turns to his kids and kisses their foreheads and says nothing, because what is there to say to a child about a grandfather who will not look in their direction? That is the story underneath the story. That is the silence the headlines cannot print. That is the part you will not see on the morning shows. But I'm going to make sure you see it here. That is the part I want you to carry with you when you scroll past the next clickbait thumbnail tomorrow. I think about his mother, too. I think about Wanda. I think about a young woman who told her son a name and held that name in her own mouth until the day she died and never once got to see that name acknowledge her child in public. I think about how heavy that must have been to carry and how light it must feel for her son to finally lay it down in a federal courtroom. Whatever you believe about the case, hold space for that. There is a woman in the ground who has been waiting on this conversation for almost 30 decades, and her son is the last voice she has left in this world. He is not just fighting for himself, he is fighting for her name. He is fighting so the last thing she ever told him does not get filed away in a sealed motion and forgotten in a basement archive. And do not sleep on the pattern, because this is not the first time a famous man with a careful image has had a story like this knock at the front door. We've seen it before. We have seen the deny, deflect, delay playbook used by athletes, by actors, by politicians, by preachers, by every powerful man who ever got cornered by his own past. We've seen the lien on grandma's house move. We have seen the gag order whispers. We have seen the convenient gun in the car. We have seen the offers of money that come bundled with non-disclosure agreements thick enough to choke on. The reason this one hits different is because the man at the center of it has spent his entire career rapping about not being that guy. And now he stands accused of running the exact same playbook he used to call out in his own lyrics. That is the irony. That is the haunting. That is the part the algorithm cannot bury no matter how many times it tries. Because at the end of all of this, when the lawyers go home and the tabloids drift to next week's scandal, the only thing that will actually matter is whether one man finally said, yes, you are mine. Money fades, fame fades, brands rise and fall like the tide, but that one sentence from a father to a son outlives every empire on this planet, and the longer Jay-Z waits to say it, or to cleanly say the opposite, the louder Rymir's silence becomes, and the louder the world's questions get. So here is what I need from you right now. If you made it this far, you are not casual. You are family. Like this video because the algorithm has been quietly burying this story, and we are not letting that slide. Share it with the one friend who still defends every celebrity no matter what. Subscribe so you don't miss the next update, because there will be a next update, probably before the weekend. And drop one sentence in the comments. Do you believe Rymir, or do you ride for Jay? No fence sitting, no middle ground. Pick a lane, tell me why. And while you're at it, tell me one more thing. If this were your father, what would you do? Would you fight for 20 years? Would you walk away? Would you take the money? Would you take the silence? Tell me. Because the more honest you get in those comments, the more honest this whole conversation gets. And right now, we need honesty more